Picture this. You wake up, you make your coffee, you drive to work, and you make literally hundreds of choices before you even hit lunch. You probably feel completely in control of all that, right? Well, let's dive into this. What if I told you that a massive amount of your daily behavior operates completely invisibly, on a subconscious autopilot? The truth is, the real reasoning behind many of the biggest decisions in our lives is shrouded in absolute mystery, driven by forces we don't even realize are at the wheel. And that brings us to an incredibly provocative question. How well do you actually know the hidden entity making the majority of your life decisions? It's pretty wild to think about. I mean, you might find yourself doing things like reacting to a friend, buying a specific car, or just getting furious at some minor inconvenience without quite knowing why. Well, today we're going to become detectives in our own minds. We are going to decode your subconscious. Okay, let's jump right into part one, the subconscious autopilot. To understand how we actually tick, we really have to start by treating our own mind like a mystery that's just waiting to be solved. And just like any good investigation, to crack the code, we can't just rely on our gut feelings. We have to gather objective, undeniable clues. So our investigation begins by intentionally stripping away our personal biases. First up, we use objective personality testing. Think of the classic Myers-Briggs framework to reveal your baseline behavior patterns. Second, we assess your learning style, which shows exactly how your brain processes the world around you. And third, character writing. This brilliantly illustrates how writers flesh out fictional characters. Seriously, ask yourself right now, how would you describe yourself in a single sentence? What is your purpose in your life story? Forcing yourself to answer that strips away all the fluff. Now imagine your house is on fire. Don't worry, everyone's safe, but you only have time to grab one thing. What is it? It is absolutely amazing how a hypothetical fire exposes our true priorities. Maybe you grab a family photo album, right? That obviously shows a deep sentimental attachment. But what if you grab something completely mundane, like your tax records? Well, that tells us something profound too. It reveals a deep subconscious need for preparation, stability, and control over your environment. Moving right along to section 2, mapping your baseline. You know, tests and hypothetical fires are a great start, but discovering your true baseline requires actually leaving your own head. You have to compare how you view yourself with the hard and, honestly, sometimes uncomfortable feedback of how your friends, family, and coworkers actually see you. You gotta map out your specific strengths and weaknesses. Like, you might think your biggest strength is your fierce determination, but your coworkers, they might see it as self-centeredness or a severe control issue. It's exactly where our own perception clashes with reality that the absolute most valuable clues about our true selves are hiding. Here is a fascinating exercise to literally bypass your brain's PR department. 500. I challenge you to sit down and write a 500-word biography about yourself in exactly 20 minutes. Why 20 minutes? Because it's barely enough time to type that much. You have to write frantically. You simply won't have the time to carefully curate what you include. By forcing the speed, you completely bypass your mental filter and reveal exactly what your brain genuinely prioritizes when defining who you are. Consider the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment. Researchers put a marshmallow in front of a child and said, look, you can eat this now or wait and get 2 later. And then they tracked those kids for decades. The simple ability to wait, to resist that immediate treat for a bigger reward down the line, directly predicted better life outcomes in school, their careers, and even their physical health. So where do you think you fall on this timeline today? Which brings us to section 3, decoding emotional triggers. All right, we've gathered the baseline data. Now it's time to interrogate our emotional suspects. What exactly happens when our brain actively lies to us? Because spoiler alert, it absolutely does. Your mind will constantly trick you just to protect you from emotional pain, and we need to learn how to spot it. Take transference, for example. This is a super common psychological trick where unresolved, heavy feelings get completely misplaced onto innocent objects or situations. You think you're mad at one thing, but your subconscious is actually reacting to something else entirely. Let me give you a perfect real-world example of transference. Imagine getting furiously, violently angry because your family decides to throw away your late grandmother's old chair. Now, logically speaking, the chair is stained, it smells funny, and for all you know, it's packed with radioactive foam. You aren't actually upset about the furniture. What's really happening is you're grieving the loss of your grandmother, and your brain has transferred that massive, overwhelming grief onto the chair because, well, a chair just feels easier to control. So the next time you experience a sudden, intense emotion, I want you to ask yourself this question. If someone talks during a movie and you feel this surge of extreme blood-boiling rage, is it really about the noise, or are you reacting because you feel personally disrespected by their actions? Understanding the actual root cause of these triggers is exactly how you keep your blood pressure down and your self-awareness high. And then, of course, we have repression. This is basically helping yourself forget an event happened just because you simply don't want to think about it. It's a really unhealthy mental block. We use it to hide from reality, which completely prevents us from processing our experiences and handling our emotions in a constructive way. It's literally sweeping the dirt under the rug. But let's be real, eventually you're going to trip over that rug. Now let's look at Section 4, the social mirror. The next phase of our detective work involves stepping out into the real world. How we act around others is incredibly revealing because our social interactions are actually a direct reflection of our internal subconscious needs. Think about this. A loved one might say to you, "I want your company." But what your brain actually hears is, "I need your help." That fascinating distortion happens because you might have a deep-seated subconscious need to feel useful to others. You literally hear their words through the filter of your own internal needs. Isn't that wild? You also need to notice exactly how and when you talk about yourself. Let's say your friend excitedly announces they just finished their PhD, and immediately, without missing a beat, you steer the conversation to the time you got your master's degree. Constantly shifting conversations back to yourself often reveals a hidden embarrassment or just a desperate, unfulfilled need to feel important and accomplished. We also have to take a hard look at how we behave when we are handed a little bit of power. Because gaining power often makes humans harsher, more suspicious, and a lot more controlling. Look at this example. Unnecessarily putting a younger sibling in timeout for a tiny, harmless mistake. Are you really doing it to teach them a lesson, or are you doing it simply because you have the power and you desperately need to feel in command of a situation? To really understand your social mirror, you have to examine your influences. The media you consume, the lessons your parents taught you, the pressure your friends apply. But here is the real secret. You don't just look at where you agree with them. Tracking exactly where your opinions and behaviors deviate from your parents or your peers, that right there is where you find your true, completely unique character. And finally, Section 5, Mastering Deep Reflection. So we've gathered the clues, we've interviewed the suspects, and now it's time for the final verdict of our self-investigation. To truly understand ourselves, we have to drop our defenses and face the hardest truth of all. We lie to ourselves, a lot. We constantly invent these highly logical, noble-sounding reasons for our questionable choices, when in reality we were probably just being vindictive or petty or lazy. Hiding from our true motives totally prevents growth. Real progress only starts the exact moment you end the self-deception. So, how do we break through all that? Try this technique. Step completely outside of your own head by giving advice. Sit down and write a letter giving advice to your younger self, and then write one to your older self. It's a brilliant exercise because it forces you to process your past experiences objectively and clarify exactly what is truly important for your future, totally bypassing your ego. Ultimately, the tests and the reflections we've covered today, they're just the beginning of the map. You have to actually go out and experience life. Travel to new, uncomfortable places to test your adaptability. Seek out real education that completely challenges your worldview. And honestly, most importantly, let go of what you think your life should be like. Real discovery happens when you break your routine. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to chew on. What new experiences are you currently closing yourself off to right now just because they scare you? Look, life is a messy, unpredictable, terrifyingly beautiful roller coaster. Don't hide from it. Drop your defenses, release your expectations, and dare to finally meet the real you.